Hmm? Ah! Oh.
Pre-dinner martini, a touch more vermouth, and the newspaper you asked for this morning, Mr. Malloy.
Santiago's failure to protect his coven, how quickly he ran to save his own flesh, filled him with unworthiness. And it made him an uncomplicated seduction.
He brought a cloak to a knife fight.
And all my rage and madness exited my body. And nothing replaced it.
Hey listeners, welcome to the show. I'm Danny.
And I'm Mark.
And I'm Billy.
And I'm Becky.
This is a spoilful podcast about Interview with the Vampire, Season 2, Episode 8. And that is the end of it. There's nothing else.
You sure?
As the interview with Louis comes to an end, Daniel reveals the truth about the trial, throwing a wrench in Louis and Armand's relationship. Louis and Lestat are reunited as Armand disappears and a new fledgling has been created.
Ooh. Okay, let's see here. General thoughts. Mark.
Overall thoughts about the episode. Oh, the episode is listed as part 2, episode 15, which is pretty much the conclusion of the book, I think, at this point for Interview with the Vampire. And I was impressed. I was loving the idea of how they were able to end this book and the end chapter of this story. Now, mind you, we are left at something at the end that we will look forward to in season 3. So keep in mind, listeners, we're going to be coming back for season 3 and having fun with this because that's a whole nother book entirely. And we'll talk about that towards the end. But I was very impressed, very satisfied. I love the performances of everybody within the cast. I loved how they were able to portray a lot of things. There was a lot of visceral things going on in it. I just enjoyed the episode and all the truths that come out within. So yeah, I really did enjoy it.
All right. How many stakes do you give the episode?
I have to give it like a 9.2 out of 10. Stakes to the heart. You know, I can, me as like anytime I write, I can't really give anything a true 10 unless it's something I absolutely truly love that I've grew up with within performances and movies and shows and things of that nature. But this is definitely heralded as a high performance on how they were able to do this at the end of this particular season and to move on to another.
How about you, Billy? What do you think?
I really loved this episode. In fact, I think it was the perfect way to encapsulate and conclude the season, especially since there were loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of references to the next season that's coming up. And as someone who's obviously a book fan, this was the first time an episode in the series felt like an Anne Rice story. For the first time, when they started including mentions of like other vampires out in the excuse me, in the immortal universe, as they're calling it. And that's when I was like, okay, the moment they started to populate the universe with the other characters, I was like, okay, we are definitely in an Anne Rice story now. And just the acting of Sam Reed is it just seems like he does it in his sleep. The way he goes about it, like
it's stellar. I could say that. And yeah, the people that he does that are mentioned would be Magnus and Akasha, and we'll talk about that later, everybody, with book talk. So if you don't want to be spoiled, there's going to be a book talk at the end. So when we do our conclusion, we're probably going to just sign off, but we'll say keep listening if you want the book talk.
How many stakes do you give it?
I'll give it an 8 out of 10, only because, as always, there's always room for improvement, especially with these adaptions. Like,
Okay, so for the audience, I do have to say this before we move on to Becky's general thoughts. Billy decided to dress up for this occasion, and I am impressed by his makeup. And so I just want to just put that out there. I wish Laura could see this. I think I'm gonna have you take a picture so we can send it to Laura because
Yeah.
this is definitely on point.
You do look amazing.
Yeah, he does look amazing, everybody. We're not doing video just yet. Eventually we'll get to that point, but he looks dapper. His beard is nicely combed. It looked like he put on some makeup, and his teeth look amazing.
What do you mean? This is
Did
his
you even
natural.
do your nails?
I did not do my nails. No.
Oh, okay. I thought
Yeah. Any opportunity I get to look like a vampire, I'm gonna do it.
There you go.
Or is this his true look and he just
Ooh.
puts makeup
Only
to
Danny
fool
would
everybody
know.
else?
Yeah.
Okay.
He keeps the secret well.
On with the show.
Yes.
Becky, what is your general thoughts?
Wow. I sat there for a good 10, 15 minutes afterwards and just thought about all of that. I didn't think there was a dull moment. The acting, as you all said, was absolutely chef's kiss. I feel like just give them all Emmys and I'll be happy. It was very powerful. It was suspenseful, and it was just so much of it was just absolutely beautiful. And I'm going to give it 1,732 sticks to the heart.
That's a lot.
That's how much I loved it.
Okay.
I mean, this episode was very, very, very good. And for the last 3 episodes, the way that I've always been watching this show is that as soon as it comes out on Sunday, I put it on and it's kind of like my background noise just to like get my morning started. But these last 3 episodes, it's not background noise. It's like I am glued to that TV screen and I'm just like, did that just really happen? Did this really happen? Did they really mention this person? And then I start like comparing it to what I remember from the books and I'm like, oh, here's a nod to this and here's a nod to that. I'm excited about this. So I'm excited to get into this episode because there's a lot that happened that kind of coincides with the book, and I am definitely going to give this 21 out of 10 stakes to the heart.
Love it.
Just because last week I gave it a 20. This week I'm going to give it a 21.
When do we end? Do we end at 50, 100?
1,732.
Yeah, exactly. All right. You guys let us know how many do we stop at that point. Otherwise, we're all going to be dusted at that point. We already know that vampires in this world get dusted from sunlight. So we get that point. We've never really seen it through a stake to the heart. But in this episode, we do see a beheading. But did we see dusting?
Yeah. So like my good best friend Caddy Herring says, the limit does not exist.
Alrighty then.
And for whoever gets that reference, we can be friends, and you can follow me on all social media.
There you go. Just look for Danny.
I was literally gonna say that actually.
All right, so we're gonna do a episode breakdown. I kind of shortened our breakdown here, so we're gonna start with the beginning of it being the aftermath of this judgment, where we see Armand's punishment, and I'm air quoting that. We
Thank
see
you.
Louis gets freed and he plans his revenge, and then we see Louis confront Lestat in Magnus's lair. So, yes, what are your guys' thoughts?
I call bullshit on Armand's, like you said, quote unquote punishment. I do not buy it for 1 second.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I wrote down. I love how Daniel has this ick for Armand, and every time he like talks, he just sure. And I'm just like, exactly. Nobody's believing your bullshit anymore, Armand. We all know the truth. You are a manipulator, and everything that comes out of your mouth is a lie.
That is true. He wanted one thing, and that was Louis.
Mhm.
And he wanted to manipulate Louis for what he wanted for himself. We all know this, and this comes out within this episode. And now, mind you, did I enjoy it? Not really from a relationship standpoint, but in a story standpoint, it's understandably for his wanting and his needs. Now, mind you, he destroyed his own coven at this point. If you think about it, he destroyed his own coven. Santiago was ready to be the new mater. He was ready to, and then Louis winds up destroying that with the Theater de Vampire at that point and destroys everything when he escapes his banishment, which is something we're going to get into a little bit. But Armand was the key manipulator of everything, and who also was he was working with Lestat at that point too, and then Lestat implemented his own, and he went off script. And Armand, as we know, spoilers everybody, there were annotated notes based upon said script that we get from Daniel later on. And we get the whole thing of I guess Rashid kind of didn't pick up my mail today or something to that respect, but to show a little bit of humor to it. But he knew deep down from what he was getting from the Telemasca and Rashid, or the real Rashid, that Armand was the culprit of everything. And we do get the twist at the end, and we'll get to that twist at the end, which is very interesting. But I saw it coming a mile away, kind of like how I saw Whistler's, sucking on blood clots on Blade 2.
Lovely.
Just to throw that out there. If you haven't watched the episode, obviously you have, most of you, but you'll get that joke if you watch the Blade series. Go back and watch it, please.
We also hear as Louis is confronting Lestat in Magnus's lair, we kind of get the introduction of Magnus.
Mhm.
So we kind of get a nod to that, and then we also get a nod to Akasha, and she gets in, and as he says, "I have Magnus's blood," and Armand's like, "He caught on fire," and then he's like, "But I have Akasha's blood as well." And so it's like, so it's very interesting to see where this is going to be on the timeline for what happens next. As we know, Akasha kind of comes into Queen of the Dam and becomes kind of relevant in the story.
Yeah, we'll get into that with book talk, I think, too, at that point. So those listeners that are listening just about the episode, when we get to book talk, we're going to go more into Akasha. We're going to go more into Magnus. But if you don't want to know, skip it. Just listen to as we go.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that's going to be involved with this. And I have a few questions, and I'll be asking Billy those questions too, because there's a lot that's going on. And then next up, and just to give a preview of what's going to happen after we finish this particular episode, which is the finale of the season, we're going to go give about 2 or 3 weeks, and then we're going to go back and go to Queen of the Damned, which came out in 1999 or 2000. I'm not too sure which.
2000, I think it was pegged as like a Valentine's Day movie.
Okay.
It was. I actually went on a date with a friend of mine who then made it into, I think I was invited as it was supposed to be a date, and then I didn't catch the hint. And I invited a bunch of other people to go watch the
no.
movie.
Oh no.
And then when I got there, I had a Valentine's Day gift waiting for me, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that that's what this was. I thought it was
Aw.
just friends going to go see this movie." But
Eh.
either way, we all had a great time. It was all friends, it was our friend group, so it wasn't like I invited strangers to this supposed date. But yeah,
Well, that's a good story to tell when we get to Queen of the Damned. So,
yes.
but like I said, everybody, listeners, we're gonna do Queen of the Damned. I'm gonna talk to Jason. We'll probably do it as collaborative, just the same for Adrenaline Cinema Podcast as well as Podcastica. So that way you're all in the loop. But
Yeah.
as we continue, or as the world turns, as they say.
So let's see here. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that first few scenes where with the revenge?
We get our first inference about what next season's going to be like, because as they're going down the wall of entombed vampires, they
Yes.
stop at Nicolas de l'Enfant for a moment.
Ooh, that is true.
That's a good observation.
Yeah. I was curious about that too, because I saw all those names as they were going by the crypts that people were shoved in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that you would know, Billy. But yeah, I was curious. I'm like, wow, how many other vampires have they banished in The Rock and in these coffins at that point?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Nicholas is supposed to be dead, not banished. So that's going to be an interesting thing. And we can discuss it in book talk if it's something
Exactly
that's related to the book talk. But yeah, I mean, they made a reference that he's gone on the show.
Mhm.
But yeah, interesting. Anything else in this section?
Not
Before
really.
we move on. Billy, Becky. No. Okay.
Are we
So-
we going into the actual act of revenge, or
Yeah, that's
That would be Louis' rage at this point.
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And his madness as he awoke and came out of his tomb.
Yeah.
And
I do have
yeah.
I
Yeah,
do have
go
a
ahead.
couple of things on that.
Okay.
I really liked the way they showed you what he was going through, how much time had passed with the cobwebs and his eerie moaning and groaning inside, and the conversation that he had in his own head. And one of the things he said really stuck with me, because I think we've all said this in our lives, but he said, if I'd made a different choice, what would I be? Basically, about the suit. I thought that was really cool. And the whole flashback thing as he's talking, I just thought the narration was perfect. The music playing, the echoes, the cobwebs. It was just they did a really good job bringing that to life.
Yeah, then we get his planning, and as he's like in the crypt, he's like writing down all their names, and then he's having like this hallucination with a ghost, I guess one of the people he ate, where he's planning out like if they go up, this has to happen, and if they go down to the sewers, this is going to happen, and this is how it's supposed to go. And I guess the ghost is a farmer, and he's like, do you know how to use a machete? so it's like it's very interesting that he's planning it, and then he like gets communication with Armand, and Armand's warning him to leave Paris because he's like they're gonna find out what I did, and if you're still in Paris, they're gonna come and find you, and they're gonna kill you. And
Yeah,
he's like, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't feel like Armand was really worried about Louis. I think he was just worried about himself. And every time, he would start in on, I mean, Louis wouldn't even let him say Claudia's name. And then when one of the points he was talking, he's like, I'm not worried about you.
And in my mind, they never clarified that it was Armand who freed him, because
It's true.
because Louis talks about the blood tasted familiar. That's all he said. And then he says, then Santiago says, where's your companion? But it could be Lestat at this point because I mean we all know that Lestat is was for Louis and he would go off script. So we don't know this. So it would be an interesting like twist to find out that it was actually Lestat that freed him from the tomb, and like Armand is just playing off this like innocent, like, yeah, I saved you, I rescued you, because we know like he wasn't, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. But we find out a lot of stuff, and so
Yeah.
it would be interesting if that was a twist that gets revealed in season 3.
I hadn't thought of that.
I have a lot to say about the trial in regards to the part list that played in it in general, which we'll get into later on. But
Yeah.
There's a lot of inference that more was happening than we were shown, and so. But I actually got fixated on that scene where he's talking to Daniel, and he's talking about how Claudia's gone. He's doing all these things, but Claudia's gone, and he's just more focused on the fact that she's gone. The world is empty of her now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well,
during that scene, just to add to it, the action that Louis and what he took, Claudia's book, we see him taking Claudia's book at that point during that whole point of him going through in his mind and working. I think at that point he was talking to Santiago at the time he was doing these things and setting it up to burn. And he takes Claudia's book for himself. So we see that physically within the episode. And the burning of Lestat's painting in the background, if you see, because it's in the back of the Theatre de Vampire. I thought that was very iconic in a sense of because, Lestat had created that with Armand at that point, and it was so symbolic of what that time was. So I thought that was very interesting, and I really did like it. Description of how he took out some of the vampires within the coven, leaving Lestat and Armand, but also the twins Celeste and Estelle.
Yeah, that's funny. That was a funny sequence where they're blaming
They're on motorcycles and they're doing the whole mind telepathy and talking about everything, and then out of the blue they just burn up on their motorcycles.
I just like how they're like, because they're like, oh, it's because we're speaking English, and then
did anybody? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did anybody notice the music, the narration, the coat as he's getting out his revenge look like a scene from Dick Tracy?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
A little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Now that you explain it, yeah, I think of it and I can picture it in my head.
I was thinking about that earlier, and I'm actually this might be book talk. This might be book talk worthy, but I'm actually listening to the book again during the day. But whatever.
Go ahead.
Whatever. In the book, Lestat makes a reference to the fact that he speaks like a hybrid form of English, which one of his influences is Sam Spade, which is I think a noir.
How you doing?
Exactly. And I don't know why, it just made me think of that when I was watching that scene, the jazz music while he's doing this sort of like slaughter, Grimehouse slaughter of the rest of the coven. I don't know, it just made me think of that. I don't know if they're connected, but
I thought it was very cool the way they depicted it and how it happened. And we get to that point where even Louis' torment to Santiago in his head, antagonizing him, the dialogue between them, telepathy or telepathically throughout this scene was amazing. And he was just like, he goes, the dialogue between them, these are from my notes. Santiago would talk about, using the ashes of Claudia and Madeline as eyeshadow and using it to salt the popcorn of the audience and things of that nature. Louis just antagonizing and getting on his goat just to get him angered to come after him, and kind of doing the same thing that Santiago and the rest of the coven were doing to Louis and Claudia and Madeline during that time with torment telepathically. And then it gets to the point where Santiago jumps out of like a sewer cap, and there's Louis, and there goes his head.
And him kind of putting his foot on his head.
Yeah.
So I have to say that it's funny how they go back and forth, and especially when Louis is like talking about Francis's small dick.
It's just because his testicles are so big.
Yeah, they're just
huge. I was like, when I heard that, I was like, wait, what? No.
I wrote that down as one of my favorite quotes.
Well, Santiago actually boasted about his testicles at one point, saying how big his balls were and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, it's like, how salty can they be? I have no clue. But I to me, honestly, not to be vulgar, but the thing is, it's like, it's a manly prowess that men do. And it's so sad in this case for the fact the way Santiago is just like, you got no head. You're dead.
Yeah. It's interesting to me because Lestat and Santiago have a lot of similar characteristics in the show. Lestat is this very bigger than life character, and Santiago wants to be a bigger than life character. And so he does a lot of egotistical things that Lestat just does without thinking about, and I think that's because it's real for Lestat and it's mockery for Santiago. He wants to be like Lestat, but he can't.
He's a fanboy, is what you're saying.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, I want to be that. I have to be that, and I'm gonna take that for Armand and be the new mater and be this person. I get that, and I understand it, but it's kind of being a poser. Back in the day, if you were all in heavy metal and we would say, oh, you're a poser. You're just acting like you enjoy this and you know everything about the culture and everything else that's in music and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's a heavy metal thing, everybody. But the thing is that, he's called out on it. And Louis literally calls him out on this and just takes him out in one fall swoop. And, like a Highlander, he loses his head.
Right. Like Lestat is Lelio for a while, and he is a riot on the stage, and Santiago got booed off the stage in London. So
yeah, you have a narcissist that's a true narcissist, and then you have a wannabe narcissist.
Right.
Yeah.
So then we move on to the next part where Daniel does his final questions. Daniel reveals that Armand was actually the director of the play and not the witness. And we get the transcript of the play gets delivered by Rashid and wrapped in a newspaper. And then we see Louis throw Armand against the wall. So that's very interesting.
Daniel pulled out the receipts. That's what I have in my notes.
Literally, that's what happens. Daniel literally pulls out everything he got from the Telemasca, and the real Rashid, as Daniel would point out, oh, he didn't get my paper. But the thing is that it's literally Daniel pointing out to Louis what has been transpiring, what Armand was up to all those years, and how he's been manipulating Louis throughout that time. So it's like, here, I'm going to explain what your evil exposition and lover has been doing to you all these years, blah, blah, blah. And then they have a huge spat, which shakes the earth like an earthquake.
Oh yeah, that was crazy. We see Daniel Malloy pretty much starts questioning, like, that's interesting because you put Sam in two different places. You put him watching Armand, but then you also have him putting you in the coffin. Did he do like a vampire trick and was like moved really fast and was in two places at once? And then we get the question about I thought, once your maker makes you, you guys can't communicate. So how is that possible? And then, of course, we move on to the fact that Daniel asks how many of those people did he manipulate? And then that's when he proceeds to say, interesting, because if you think about it, there are two people in that theater that could have saved you. Uh, and then he pulls out the receipt and goes, here's a receipt of it was actually Lestat who saved you, not Armand.
Which I have a lot to say about that. I have a whole lot to say about that because it sheds some light on some things about Armand and his motives, which I'm very confused about. But also, I think they're 100 times more complex than we think. I think the trial was old-fashioned Armand. I remember last time I was on the podcast, we talked about how he seems to have this propensity to want to use other people to do his dirty work for him. And I think he was doing that again. But he was doing it in such a way that was like unlinear. It was just sort of like it could have gone either way, and he was okay with either way it could have gone. In book talk, I'll talk more about this. But throughout the series, it sort of implies that Armand has a perpetual resentment towards Lestat. And it's a lot of complex reasons why that might be. But my personal opinion is that Armand had two motives for the trial. One, he wanted to get rid of the coven. Oh, no, not two motives, like three motives. He wanted to get rid of the coven. He wanted Louis. And he wanted to get revenge and retribution against Lestat. How was he going to do that? Well, what would he do to someone that in the vampire world that would hurt them the most? He would get rid of their companions. He wanted to get rid of both Louis and Claudia, but he wanted Louis, but he wasn't that invested enough into keeping Louis alive that it would have bothered him either way if Louis had died with Claudia during the trial, which is why Lestat had to be the one to save Louis. And Lestat had to make a decision. Do I want to save my lover or do I want to save the child that I was forced to create for him to be happy? Of course, he's going to save his lover. And then obviously Armand wanted the coven to be destroyed so he could wash his hands of it. He wanted the theater, the whole business of it, so that way he could go and wander and do whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But then it's like, why would Armand want Louis to die? Why would he be comfortable with Louis dying, but then spend the next 75 years with him?
I think it was to get back at Lestat.
I mean, we do get that petty little like, oh, now that you know that we're all alive, this is how my life's gonna be, and he starts making out with Armand, and I'm just like, ugh, gross.
How very typically.
It's literally a slap to the face to the person that you were with before, just to prove a point. It's like, I'm happy now, I'm gonna live. And even Lestat states it at a certain point. It's like, have fun with your lover, blah blah blah.
It was definitely relatable from a queer's perspective, because how many times have I seen that happen in our world?
Honestly, I don't think it's just from
petty.
Yeah, definitely.
It's honestly, it's not. I think it as universal.
Yeah,
I don't think it's just from one sided. It could be queer, straight, or whatever.
Yep.
I think it's universal of like, hey, I'm going to show you I'm happy with somebody. You're not with me. I'm going to make you pay and I don't think of it as black and white. I think of it as universal at this point, because everybody has relationships, and it doesn't matter what sexuality you are. I think it's like, I'm gonna screw you over and make you feel 10 times worse, and that's literally what Louis was doing with Armand to Lestat, and I feel bad for Lestat because it's like, oh my god. He's like, okay, have fun. You do your thing.
How long will it? We'll see how long it holds.
Yeah.
Well, that's the next book.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of brings me to my next point, though, because they talk about during the trial, they show the animation of Santiago and Estelle and Celeste, sending Lestat a message all the way in New Orleans.
Yeah.
My question is, was it them or was it Armand who was talking to Lestat, and Lestat was coming to Louis' rescue and had to go through the trial to be his savior? Because he kind of looks reluctant to go through the trial, and which is why he keeps going off script.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which frustrates Santiago.
Oh yeah, and then we also see Lestat pretty much defend Claudia. He's like, "How are you gonna get her to like go at your will?" And then Armand's like, "Oh, we're gonna cloud her mind or whatever." And then Lestat just goes like, "She's stronger than that." I was just like, "Oh, look at Lestat fighting for Claudia."
Well, because I think even in his black little heart, he still had love for his immortal daughter. I mean, his blood is inside of her.
He cared for her, yeah.
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 I want to back up, though, when they were talking about Armand's penance, and that when Lestat showed up to practice or rehearse, that Armand stayed in his coffin. I'm calling BS on that one, too.
I mean, the thing with this show is that we get so many points of view that we don't know what the actual truth is, because I mean we're seeing a lot of things that are happening that like with Santiago and stuff, and we don't know what's really like, did Santiago, what role he played, because he wants to say that he was like a bigger role in Claudia and Madeline's death than we are made to believe. And then we see that it was actually Armand who was the director of this play. So it's like, it's very confusing to find out like who was really behind everything at the end of the day, because everything's being told by three different people and their points of view. And just like the game of telephone, by the end of the thing, you say, "I want a hamburger," and then it goes into something very inappropriate, like "I want to touch a butt" or something, or "I want to touch a bun." like the story is going to be made to a whole other version of it.
I want a vegan burger.
Anything else during this part before we move on to the next part?
The next part would be what exactly? Daniel and him revealing and everything?
Well, we talked about Daniel revealing everything that happened, and we kind of see it play out with it. So then now we are at where Louis leaves Dubai.
Yeah.
Anything before he leaves Dubai?
Not before he leaves Dubai. I have everything up. I have in my notes. I kind of go into sequence, and just to give an idea, bringing up everything, all the information was fed to him. What Armand has done with Louis. That's what I have stated as just like a bullet point. Saying Armand was the person orchestrating. Obviously, we do know this, that he was orchestrating everything. That's what I have. But we left out somebody that he brings up, which I find funny. Sam apparently was saved with Santiago at some point, but he's still alive. And Armand and Lestat, so as well as the witches, but we saw them burn. But apparently, Sam is a DJ with a helmet on his head now.
Decorative helmet.
a decorative helmet, which makes
Mhm.
me think Daft Punk. Everyone.
Ah,
I didn't make
yes.
that connection. Oh my god.
So call me crazy, call me kooky, call me wacky, but that was the first thing that came to my mind. Daft Punk.
That would be funny if he shows up next season, joining Lestat on his tour.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Pet
Going to beach.
opener. Yeah, doing the opening
Yeah.
or whatever.
Okay, so now we're at the point where Louis pretty much leaves Dubai and travels to New Orleans to find Lestat,
Yes.
and we get Louis tells Lestat that he knows the truth.
This
Well,
was
there's something that happened before that I find interesting. His travels in New Orleans and how the story is kind of twisted and changed from what
yeah.
he knows is the truth, and the names are changed, like Lion Court, things of that nature of who did what and where they were, and you could see the smirk on his face and smiling a little bit about the stories that
Yeah.
he's hearing during this tour before he gets and he follows a vampire that is getting stuff for Lestat and his little hovel of being crippled and dying kind of
Yeah.
look on himself before Louis actually approaches him and talks to him about certain things.
It was
I
one of
did-
the most beautiful scenes in TV history was the moments
Oh, yeah.
between the two of them.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And Sam Reed looked hot with that haircut and that robe.
I just well again a perfect example of telephone. We get the name changes, like what actually happens. And so this is just a perfect example of as people tell their story, things change and names change and who was involved in what happened change because everything gets translated to their own beliefs, I guess you would say. But yeah.
I did want to say that there is a reference. If you haven't watched the Mayfair Witch shows, you probably wouldn't know this. But if you have, the
Wait,
hotel.
hold on. Laura, pay attention to this part because we all know how
No.
the witches, the witches is your very, very, very show. So pay attention to this part.
No.
I
Lara hates
watched
that
this-
show.
Yeah, I understand why.
I
I
know.
watched the first season.
I know. I'm just teasing Laura.
And Rima Joe actually hates that show as well too.
Oh,
By the
man.
way, I think everybody hate watches that show, but
Anyways,
regardless.
I'm sorry, Billy. Go ahead.
Well, the hotel that Louis checks into is the same hotel that the main character Rowan goes to meet her mom.
You are
really?
right.
Yeah, so that's
Billy, you're so good.
well because so the universes are supposed to be intermingled. I
Mhm.
think that's their first little like they're together, they're in the same universe, time
World.
continuum, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like when Daniel was talking about the Talamasca and how they're not supposed to get involved, but they always get involved. It's the same thing in the Mayfair
Right.
Witches. That's cool.
Right. Yeah.
It's funny how that goes. But yes, going back to this scene between Louis and Lestat, and them just kind of going back and forth of him being like, "I know the truth," and then Lestat being like, "What did you want me to tell you? I told you so. I told you so." And it was just very like, just the way he said it, I was like, "Oh, that was so good." And that goes back to this whole situation where Lestat tells Louis and Armand as they were walking out of Magnus's lair, where he's like, "Let's see how long this holds," because he knew in his mind like Louis is gonna find out the truth, and let's see how long it takes for Louis to catch on to the truth and see how long. So I feel like that was kind of a dig at Armand to be like, let's see how long this lasts. Let's see
Mhm.
if how long it takes Louis to find out the actual truth, But then we get this whole thing about Claudia, and that really broke me because Lestat really goes, he says, "Do you know I saw Claudia's last moments?" And he breaks down and he's like, "I still see her." Like, and I'm just like, "Oh my God, that's so crazy."
The
Because,
tear
like,
of blood.
yes.
Wait. There
Ah.
was actual tear of blood.
Yeah.
Blood
Okay.
tear.
I just saw one, but
Yeah.
All right.
I've
So
actually
yeah,
sorry.
we no. I'm just saying. I just want to get that recollection because I don't remember it, but I watched the episode twice. But that is something that they talk about within the books. Billy, you could confirm, and I have not really seen it as much, and it's just like, okay,
I think I saw Madeline crying tears of blood during the trial.
I
When-
think I want to say that I feel like the reason that they don't show it as often is just because blood smears, and so they would have to like be constantly like if they smear the blood, then you're gonna have
yeah,
blood like
splotch, yeah,
yeah all over your face. So I think
yeah.
that's why they held back on doing the tears. And I don't know because when they do the tear for Lestat, it kind of you see it roll down, but you don't see it like linger on his face. So it's kind of like you
It's
see
like a
the like
drop, and it just goes,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and you see it. You if you miss like if you blink, you miss it, and you don't
Yeah, I think
because
that's
there's
what I
no
did a bunch
yeah
of
because
times.
there's no like after
Yeah,
like
it's not like in the HBO series True Blood where you saw the blood draining down
yeah
like Deborah Ann Wall's face when she was crying half that time
yeah
and smearing. Because I
yeah
think that would be take more to effects, but the way they actually
yeah
do it in this case, the blood is almost like a tear, kind of a tear drop, but blood,
Mhm.
but it just goes down and just
yeah
leaves.
yeah
Yeah, I
Very
missed
yeah
it
subtle.
completely.
I was gonna say it wasn't as I was thinking of True Blood 2, and I was thinking the blood tears on this show are not as thick and
Yes.
viscous as
yeah
the True Blood ones. It was very watery, but it was red.
Yeah.
yeah exactly.
Okay. No
Laura,
worries.
I'm sorry, Laura. Becky, what were you gonna say? I'm sorry. I'm
I'm
so
honored.
sorry.
I am honored. When they were talking to each other and Louis was about to say something and Lestat automatically gets on the defensive.
Mhm.
Like, well, am I gonna do you want me to list all the ways I wronged you? And Louis in tears, like, I want to thank you. And the look on Lestat's face was like, what? I rewound and
Yeah.
watched that so many times. That was such, and they embrace while the whole world around them is falling apart. It just that
Yes, I have to say, I do like this whole Lestat's or Sam Reed's performance in this scene. It just gives me Lestat vibes all around. Just his like his the way he talks, like how he delivers that like what are we supposed to do, talk about how I wronged you and how you wronged me and all these things, and just his delivery was just so on point to how I feel Lestat would be. It's just on point.
and Sam Reed wows me how he can take the same character but show you four different versions of that character, and this was another
Yes,
one, and it just blows my mind.
Well, I think this is
exactly.
also important to note that this was Lestat outside of the narrative he was telling Daniel, and we have to remember that his memory of the first interview done in the 70s is different than the interview that was just recently done. So any kind of information we get of Lestat has to be given with a grain of salt anyway, because the narrator is untrustworthy. So maybe this version of Lestat that we see in the townhouse in New Orleans is the real Lestat, the not vindictive, hateful, narcissist vampire.
And I mean, I think we kind of get that here where Louis is pretty much saying like I want to thank you. You actually gave me a gift and I treated this as a curse and because I was suffering, I wanted you to suffer. In reality, like I shouldn't have done that. I should have, and I'm sorry that I brought Claudia to you and I shouldn't have and I should have known better and I should
Yeah.
have, and just I feel like Louis at this point has a better understanding of himself, and is more independent, and because he's come to a realization that he doesn't need Armand, he doesn't need Lestat. He just wanted that final closure of saying, like, hey, I made you the villain in my story, but you weren't the villain in my story. You were there, and I'm sorry that I put you through what I put you through. Let's move forward and just coexist as two human beings existing on this planet. And so I find it very poetic and very loving, and just I'm excited.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, I think Louis had grown at this point, grown into the idea of being a vampire and acceptance of who he is. And it was only through his experience with Lestat, having Claudia, having Armand, all that throughout his life, and through all the deceit and deception between both or all three at certain points of trying to describe his life and his journey. And that's literally what this whole book is about, I think. The Interview with a Vampire is his journey from being a human who died and became a vampire, and that journey of a vampire till now. And it took what, over almost 100 some odd years to get to that point. And now that book is closed. And now we're left off with another book that's open because Lestat is sitting there. And he needs to continue his story. And I'm sure come next season, as we all know, and spoilers, everybody, we already spoke about it last episode. Season 3 is a go, and it's going to be centered around Lestat. Now, mind you, when we get into spoilers and book talk and everything else, we're probably going to talk about what our thoughts of what's going on, because Billy, Danny, Becky, and I have been talking through Messenger and our thoughts about, because we're going to be covering Queen of the Damned, which is basically the book of Lestat, but we're going to have our thoughts of what the music's going to be like, how the story may unfold, where Lestat will be, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
But that's later on in this podcast. So we got a little bit more. I know we're almost an hour in, but I would give it probably another half hour, 45 minutes until we completely end. And I thank you for holding on with us. And we'll get into book talk at the end. So if you don't like book talk, skip that after we do our sign off, and we'll say, this is book talk. And we'll go on from there. But yeah, I just thought overall that it was Louis' story. And he's grown, and then he's at that point and he's moved on. Whether or not we see him again is another story entirely.
I feel like everything's gonna, for the third season, I don't think we're gonna get probably Louis. We probably won't see him for the first 2 or 3 episodes. Is probably gonna be just Lestat and just his upbringing and who he becomes and how he becomes Vampire Lestat. And then we'll probably go into a new point of view of how he met Louis and how Claudia was happening. But I feel like that part of it is only going to be a short part of the story. Just because I don't think they want to bore us with a whole first season of
a recast of what happened in the first story.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're not going to do that.
I feel like we're gonna get maybe one episode where
a recap, and then literally Lestat's point of view, and it's going to be a fast forward, and then we're going to get to a point where he's at that point.
And he's going to be going on tour.
Exactly. Or he'll go on tour, and then he'll be like, but before we get into that, this is my story from that point on. And then
Yeah.
they'll go into that at that point, which is really cool if they do that. So AMC,
Yeah.
let us know.
Yeah, because
Let us know. Contact podcastica.com or Pyrocore Entertainment or pyrocoreentertainment.com or Adrenaline Cinema podcast at gmail.com. Let us know, because we would like to get some sort of Becky was also part of a focus group, so we would
I
like
am
to be
available
part of
for
that.
season 3.
Same here. So Mark
Yes,
Kirkman at gmail.com.
we are all available to see a sneak peek of what season 3 is going to bring us, because I'm excited.
Yeah.
Because
So excited.
the movie Queen of the Dam actually is covering Vampire Lestat and Queen of the Dam. So it's 2 books. They're
Folded
covering
into one.
into one movie. And
Yeah.
so, but
Yeah,
of
that's
course
where
there's
Billy comes into place too, because he's going to actually have to divide that and explain it at the end.
Well, I'm pretty sure, because the Vampire Lestat is part both really too. Is Vampire Lestat is the origin story of Lestat plus the setting the scenes for Queen of the Damned. So I'm pretty sure, because the interview with the vampire was 2 seasons, I'm pretty sure that's how they're going to do it
Yeah.
with this also. First season
Yeah.
will be like setting the scene for the actual stuff having to do with the Queen of the Damned.
Mhm.
So that's
Yeah,
probably
that's going to be, I'm excited, and I can't wait.
I like that idea. But before
Yeah.
we get into any of that, we have to go back to the ending of this particular episode.
So we're going to move on to the part where Daniel Malloy is being interviewed, and he is not happy with the critics.
Below me.
And he is going on this tangent about vampires are real, and this is not a fiction book. This is actually real. I interviewed one vampire. Oh, he goes, I interviewed one vampire. Wait, hold on. No, I actually interviewed 2 real vampires. And then we also, in this scene, get the reveal that Daniel Malloy is now a vampire.
Yep. He it makes me think all that time were they transitioning him into being a vampire, and that person from the Telemasca saying in the very beginning, or within I guess within the first 3 to 4 episodes, he states, he goes, well, they either ended up dead or became undead. And
Yes.
literally that's what happened to Daniel. And we already know just how alluded he's saying during his conversation with Louis that Louis is his master, meaning that he is the one that turned him.
No, Armand.
No,
yeah.
Armand did.
because he can talk
Yeah.
telepathically with Louis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because Daniel is like standing out there, and he's all like, have you heard from my maker?" And then
that's where I got it wrong.
and
Okay,
then,
sorry.
Yeah, and then he's like, "No," and then he's like, "That asshole." But I wonder if he's disappeared because, Louis does tell Armand, like, do not touch him. If you hurt him in any way, I will come back and kill you. And then he's like, he tells Daniel, like, $10 million is being wired to your account
right now.
Oh, and then one thing I
And
forgot to
the-
mention too is that as Louis is leaving for Dubai, he looks back at the laptop and sets it on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I was
All
like,
that work.
well, no. In my mind, I was like Daniel Malloy is not smart to back up his files into a cloud or something.
I like that.
That's perfect.
Perfect. Yeah.
On my second watch through, I noticed that you could tell that Daniel's a vampire during the interview.
Yes, he
Because-
does. Yeah, he does
If you
look
could
it.
look at his hands, you can see that they're elongated nails, and his
Yep.
eyes are a little bit flashier behind his lenses and stuff like that. And
I didn't even notice that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was my second watch through though when I noticed it. I was like, wait, something's not right here.
Yeah.
So,
I saw that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the sunglasses and then went straight to his nails. But he
Yeah,
really
they're-
did give zero craps in that interview. And
Yeah.
he's like, blow me at the end. I'm like, yes, yes, Daniel Malloy, you won me over.
And do
Oh, yeah,
credit
he was-
to Eric Bogosian too for being that way too, and then embracing the character as a vampire. Because Eric Bogosian as an actor, he kind of embodies the character, but I really think of him as being like, well, I don't want to play that, and now he's like, okay, fine, I'll do it, like a Willem Dafoe,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, when he talks about that, hold on, I'm sorry. My cat decided that she wants attention now.
Kitty
Aw.
trauma.
Hi, Kitty.
I just lost my train of thought. Where were we? So Daniel Malloy just not giving any fucks, I guess you can say.
Mhm.
It was just chef's kiss to everything, and then we were going into pretty much the final scenes of this episode where he reaches out to Louis and is like, all your residual checks are bouncing back, like give me your address, and he's like, you know where I'm at, and then he's all like, and then we also see Daniel Malloy go on a hunt. I didn't see that the first time, but then
Really?
I realized, yeah, he started following that guy. Like after he like throws something in the trash, he sees this guy and then starts following him. And then towards the end where he's like, come on, Louis, let's do another book. We won't have we won't have editors this time. It will all be just your what you think or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like then you just hear like some voice go like what the heck, and then you just hear just like some gurgling sound.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was something out of like Pedro Pascal when Buffy was going to college and he turns.
I was literally just watching that.
And she turns around and she goes, oh, you're a vampire. Sorry, Sarah Michelle Gellar. Sorry, Pedro Pascal. I brought that up. By the way, that's a cheesy plug for Still Slaying a Buffy First podcast on Podcastica because they did cover that episode.
And the prom is coming up next, and that's one of my favorites.
I love that. I did they cover it? No, they haven't covered that because they're doing the prom right now. All right, yeah. So that will be coming up soon. Everybody. Sorry, Penny. Sorry, Kara. I jumped to the conclusion.
I
Good episode.
when they're back in his apartment, or I guess that's way more than an apartment. But did you see Claudia's dress?
I did.
Yes.
And then we also see Lestat's portrait.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
Yes, it's
Lestat's portrait's up there, which makes me wonder, like, is that a new portrait or is that like, did he
Another
save that
portrait.
It has to be another portrait because that burnt down when
It was burning. We saw it in
Yeah.
the scene.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Unless there's a reference to another character who loves to paint in the next season.
We'll
Billy
find
dropping
out.
bombs.
Yeah, Billy's dropping the bombs.
I love it. I love it.
yeah, and then we also Daniel is pretty much like talking about how the vampires are not happy with him, and then we just start hearing like different languages of vampires talking about Louis and how disgusting he is for doing what he did and putting, documenting the world of the vampires. And then you just start hearing them say like, we're gonna kill. And then we get that final scene of Louis like, you know where I'm at. My doors are open. My penthouse is being guarded by mortals, which you guys can, and then the glass or the windows in my townhouse, they're covered with this foam that protects you from the sun and like all these things, and then goes, come get me, you know. And if we've all seen Queen of the Dam, Lestat says that, you know, come out wherever you are,
Yeah.
because like I'm here, this is where I live,
Come and get me.
come and
I'm
get
leaving
me.
it out there. Yep.
So
I own the night. That was the
yes,
excellent fade to black.
That's a good
Yes.
quote too, by the way.
I was actually expecting to hear like a faint whisper from Akasha as the closing voice of the season to sort of, you know.
Introduce the next
Yeah.
season. Yeah, I would feel the same way too. But that's dependent if who they cast. It would be like The
Right.
Walking Dead when they cast
Michonne. When
Michonne.
they cast,
Yeah.
And they had
Michonne.
somebody who was there, and
Yeah.
it wasn't, you know, Denai Guerrera in the very beginning, at the very end of that
Yeah.
particular season.
Mhm.
And then the next season, holy crap, we got Denai Guerrera, you know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
gonna, it would be one of those things. So if they didn't whisper that, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it could be have been alluded to. That would have been something in lettering would have been perfect.
I'm excited to see who they cast. Aaliyah left some really big shoes to fill.
Honestly,
Oh, yeah.
Rest in peace.
her portrayal was extravagant and definitely entertaining, and I did enjoy it. And it's a sad thing that she is no longer with us, and she was a talent, you know, vocally
Yeah.
and visually, as well as
Yeah.
acting wise as well. So to let you guys know, I'm going to say it again. We'll be covering Queen of the Damned. So
I will say that I don't like how they advertise the movie, because when I first saw the first trailer,
Mhm.
it was like Akasha based. Like they were making the movie sound like it was about Akasha,
yes,
but when you watch it, it's like it's about Lestat and who he is, and Akasha plays a small like role in the film.
she only shows up at key moments, and
Yeah.
she is a major figure, yes. But the thing is that the whole story, and I'm sure Billy will elaborate when we get to that point, when we get to the movie, of where the books are divided and what story is more important and prominent per book within the story that we do get. But that is another podcast altogether. So let's continue on. I say, Daniel, we go into other notes of this particular episode and then move into quotes. So I don't have any other notes. I kind of dropped the bomb with the whole you know, about the who Sam looks like. So that was the major note that I had, and I thought it was pretty funny. But all I have is quotes. But if you guys have notes, go ahead. Feel free.
Pretty much covered all of mine except for I liked it when Louis referenced Lazarus. Did anyone ask Lazarus if he wanted to be woke? Thought that was a good reference. If you don't know, it's Lazarus is out of the Bible.
Yeah. And then he's like, nobody cares about Lazarus. That was funny.
That's all I've got.
And then I do some things that I picked up when Lestat was talking about Magnus and how Magnus is only interested in blonde, blue-eyed men. And so that goes into what Lestat looks like, which is blonde, white, blue eyes. So that was very interesting. We kind of get an insight of who Magnus is and what his interests were. I didn't realize that during my first few watches that I don't know who RJ is. I don't know if he's a Telemasca guy or that's supposed to be Rashid that's like messaging Daniel throughout the first interview.
It is Rashid.
Is it Rashid? Okay.
Yeah.
Because he's like requesting for the receipts, and then it wasn't until after like today, I think, or the third watch, when I realized that about the newspaper, because Daniel's like, oh, he must have left when he delivered the newspaper.
Yeah.
And then I paid attention to that part, and I was like, oh, that's where the envelope came from. Rashid gave him
Yes,
the
yes,
envelope.
yes.
I didn't catch that the first few
I
times.
got that the first and second time. I haven't watched it a third time, but I caught that right away, and I was like, "Yeah, Rashid's on his side."
I was scared for
Yeah.
Daniel when that newspaper got put down because you knew something was in it, and Armand did not look happy at any point as that interview was going on.
Because he
And I
wasn't
love,
the real Rashid.
yeah.
And in my mind, I am trying to figure out how it is that Armand has all this power, but can't see this. Like, he doesn't see all these twists and turns, and that Daniel Malloy is gonna reveal this twist that, like, he's
How did he not
behind.
read his mind?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's the
I-
sickness that he had at that point.
Ooh.
So there's that thing that Lara had brought up that somebody else used as an idea of what was going on with Daniel, because Daniel was literally at that point dying. They're giving him a diet, trying to help him, and we've already had that falsitivity of his memories and everything coming back because of his memories due to his illness. And now it's like, okay, so Armand can't really read anything from Daniel because of all this crap that's going on in his body and his mind. So everything is coming full forth for Daniel, and Daniel is able to recollect everything from back in 1973 to some degree, and certain memories that were implemented by Armand. And then now he's able to kind of challenge that and hide his memories from Armand. And I think that was the issue in dual play that was going on within the whole story that we were seeing unraveling with Daniel being employed. I don't think that was something that Louis understood, but it worked out nonetheless. And it unfolded this whole story, which is pretty cool, very adaptive, very cunning by the writers.
Yes. Any more notes? Because I went through all my notes.
I do
have
have
no
one
notes.
more. When they're seated at the table going through that final scene, I really liked the setup of that long table. Armand at one side, Louis in the other end, and then Daniel in the middle. I feel like it was a bit symbolic for what was about to happen.
Yeah. How about you, Billy? Any more notes?
Nope. I've been spewing everything I wanted to say this whole time.
Sound like me, Billy. I'm just like, I'm gonna throw it out there, whatever.
How about any quotes? Do you guys have any quotes? I pretty much went through all my quotes throughout the episode here.
I have quotes, but the thing is, if I start quoting things, I'm going to start, quoting, Rocky Horror. But at this point, I will put out a couple of quotes that I have from this particular episode. One is Louis saying, "I tasted blood. I knew it was his. Why? I thought Claudia is dead. I was dead. I was dead. But my rage had risen, followed closely behind my madness."
Oh yeah,
That's good.
that madness really took over as he's like hallucinating and writing their names and mapping everything out. He even drew the theater, and he had like it all drawn out and how he was gonna get his revenge. So that was pretty cool.
He acted his butt off too.
Oh,
Yes.
that he did.
Yeah, he did. My favorite part was when he was talking to the hallucination of the dead man, and he goes and turns to him. He goes, "I gotta borrow your truck for that." And I was just like, he's like, I don't need it anymore. I'm dead.
That was good.
I have a few more if anybody doesn't have any others.
I have one.
Go ahead.
And it was when Lestat and Armand and Louis were in the lair, and Lestat looked at them and said, "Does it take a lot out of you destroying everything in your wake?" Well, almost everything. And then he says that they have details to work out after their homicidal frolic. I thought that was funny. That's it.
I have a few more, but I'll pull up the ones that I thought were interesting. Louis saying, "I've come to kill you," and Lestat saying, "I have the blood of Magnus in me," and Armand saying, "Magnus burned." Lestat saying, "I have the blood of Akasha in me." He doesn't know who that is. So,
Yep.
a little
Yes.
bit of seeding for the next season, everybody.
Yes. Yes. How, Billy, do you have any quotes?
No.
Okay.
Mark said the one I was going to use, the one about Claudia being dead.
Okay. Sorry.
No worries. No worries. No
Hey,
worries.
it's out there. It's out there, and
Yeah.
I'm
Great
going to end my
minds.
quotes at this point, too. So, obviously, listeners, if you have anything, you pride on everything, things that you love, feedback is the key. Send that out to us. We will be doing Queen of the Damned probably within the next 3 weeks. Let us know. We'll keep you apprised. It'll be on House Podcastica. It'll be on Adrenaline Cinema Podcast. Let us know. And at the very end, you'll get that information and how to send that feedback. But now we're going to move on
to feedback. So we're gonna go to the feedback. Becky, can you do the first feedback from Alma?
I sure can. I love Alma's feedback. Alma Contreras says, "I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew Armand was no good. I had hoped Louis would open his eyes to Armand's manipulation. Too bad Louis didn't kill him after." I agree. I thought it was kind of odd that Malloy pieced it all together before Louis ever saw it. Now, mind you, I have not been a fan of Malloy, but when he busted out the script with Armand's notes, I cheered, and she's got like a confetti emoji. In the last episode, I had a hard time believing Lestat had no feelings for Louis or Claudia. I'm so glad it was revealed in this story of how he did have deep love for them, even though everything had happened how it did. The last scene where Louis and Lestat talk, I was utterly broken, and she's got a crying face emoji, and I'm right there with her. I was left with a question, though. So all those vampires' voices we hear talking shit about Louis, are they mad because they just found out what he did in Paris through Malloy's book? I didn't understand why everyone was so mad after all the years that had passed. Anyway, I loved how Louis ended the finale by calling them out. "I own the night." I was clapping through my tears. Can't wait for next season. Same, Alma.
Yes, we cannot wait for that. And we have to say, I think, to answer that question, those people, I think the book has just been released, and I think they're mad about the fact that he has now outed the vampire community, and I think, and we'll probably go more in depth in book talk, but I think Lee wanted an out, and this was his out, and so I think they're mad at him for outing vampires. So
I think you're right.
yeah. All right. So the next feedback comes from Rima Joe. That finale, Sam Reed is Lestat. It's all capitalized. I had to do that. Is Lestat. Anne Rice herself would weep at his performance.
Aw.
I agree.
Yep.
Same here. Thank you, Rima. We missed you. We were hoping you could be on, but I know you're kind of busy.
Yes.
And you always will have a seat here if you want to come on. And I know this is strange indeed. All right.
Good.
So with that, we're going to move on to some voicemail or voice feedback that we've gotten. So the first one up is going to be from our friend Sam. So I'm going to play that right now.
Whoa. Like that's like my main thoughts of season 2. It was amazing. I think they did such a good job with a really hard narrative because Lestat's not around a lot at this part in the book, and they did a fantastic job with it. They brought in Dreamstat, they expanded his role in the trial and added in some extra scenes because, you know, I don't think it takes a genius to realize Lestat is one of the primary pulls of both the TV series and the Vampire Chronicle books. And I thought they did a great job with a big challenge. And it's different than season 1, which I always appreciate. I thought the apex of this episode was going to be the fire and the death of the coven. And then it was over in like half an hour, and I see on my remote, I'm like, what are you going to do for the rest of the half an hour? Oh, I didn't have to wait long. But just circling back real quick, that was fantastic. Lunatic Louie was amazing. Jacob Anderson is fantastic. When he meowed, I actually cackled. Like, the actor had so much fun with this part of the role, and I loved it. I mean, it was fantastic. Santiago's death was great. Ben Daniels, bravo. You're my favorite Santiago. I can't wait to see what you do next. And whew, they pushed the envelope even to the end. Like, you knew Santiago was going to say something gross. But when he talked about jerking it with Claudia's ashes, I was like, ooh, too soon, sir. Way too soon. Yes. Not like he was going to be around long enough. But it was so fantastic. And then we get those iconic lines that we all know from the books. That's it. There is no more. And then the apex moment of season 2, arguably season 1, and Daniel Malloy's character that I think the writers have been waiting for this mic drop moment since season 1, episode 1 for Daniel Malloy. I have a couple more follow-up questions. I'm still excited by it. Like, I leaned in. Yes, sir. Tell me everything you know, investigative journalist. It was incredible. I don't know about you guys. I didn't realize Armand was that involved in this. I thought he was keeping the secret. I didn't know the motherfucker was directing this. Holy shit. He planned this. Like, Sam was Talamasca, so pretty sure it was Armand who orchestrated these deaths because, you know, the rules apply to everyone but Armand, apparently. And he was going to kill Louis. I did not put any of this together, and it was horrific. And honestly, kind of closer to the Armand from the books, from what I remember. I haven't read all of them, but I'm like, he's an asshole in the books. Terrible backstory, really rough history, and a complete asshole. Maybe not complete, but way more of an asshole than Lestat. And I mean, Assad, Armen? I don't remember his last name. Oh, it's awful. He plays this character so well that I kind of forgot that his character was such an asshole in the books. So good. And then you guys were right. Real Rashid was Talamasca. And Daniel Malloy's a vampire. Fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing that in season 3. I don't know where that's going to go. I mean, hey, RJ warned him, and he didn't listen. I mean, Real Rashid got the fuck out of there real fast, as he should. And the makeup scene between Louis and Lestat. Oh my gosh, that was everything I didn't know I wanted. It was so good. It had this is me in the book. Like, this is the Lestat I remember from the books. He's charming, he's abrasive, he's rude, he's the brat prince. He's also funny and intelligent and very vulnerable when it comes to the people in his life. And like, this is like where we saw this come out. Is much more, I guess, human than season 1 was, at least giving the impression to me. And it was so good. Their makeup was so great. Like, when he talked about Claudia's death still haunting him and returning to New Orleans, Louis' home, and where he met Louis in the love of his life. So I'm super pumped. That's a boat in the background. And it was so good. And the embrace, I wanted them to kiss more, but they didn't. I hope they're still together. It was so, so good. I also like the jokes that he brought in because I'm like so engaged in that scene. And he goes, Siri, off. And I was like, Lestat's always acclimated to life, like modern life, really well. And I liked how he made the joke about the millennial vampire, which cracked me up because Sam Reed and Jacob Anderson are also millennials like myself. And then I realized, sir, your age is showing because you're a couple hundred-year-old vampire. And all that vampire was trying to do was bring you your food, which he did, and then warn you about a Category 3 or a Category 4 hurricane outside. So I like that play actually on the joke that the joke's actually on the people who judge millennials appreciate. So the only thing we really didn't get answers to is Ahsoka, Ashaka, Akasha. Gosh, I can't. Ugh, my brain. That was brought in, so I think next season's going to be that. And we never really did find out extra information about the great vampire convergence. Like, they called it something else, but what do you guys think? What is that? I don't remember it from the books, but I'm pretty sure it is in the books. Thank you so much for this podcast. It's been amazing. You guys made me enjoy this show so much more. And I hope you guys will come back and do season 3. And unfortunately, I'm guessing 3 years.
I hope it's not that long.
I don't think it's going to be that long, Sam. And yeah, and like I said before in the last podcast, you definitely have a seat to come back and be on the podcast if you want. But we always look forward to your feedback as well, and we're thankful for it too.
I saw Billy's face when she was talking about the vampire conversion. He's like, what? No, I don't recall this.
I mean, maybe she's just using wording I'm not familiar with, but I'm not sure. I mean, maybe that's something for book talk. I'm not sure. Vampire conversion. I don't know what.
Yeah, in my mind, I thought she was going to say Magnus because she talks about Kasha. So I thought maybe she was talking about Magnus. So I don't know. Maybe I have no idea. But okay,
I'll figure it out.
I completely forgot about Santiago using Claudia's ashes to play with himself. What?
Yeah.
A turd.
Yeah.
I'm like,
well, he is a turd, but okay.
Good riddance to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got off easy with just a head lopping off.
Yeah, it was all his narcissist attitude and his being bolster of who he was and trying to be present and being more important. And
he's a pick-me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. You have the perfect words for it, Billy. My goodness. It's a different world all unto me. But oh my goodness. All right. Well, on to I guess the next voicemail that we got, and that's across the pond from New Zealand.
Ooh, yay.
And that would be from our friend Onwin.
Yay.
So let's play that now.
Hi, Mark and Lara and Danny. This is Anwin. Thank you so much for your awesome podcast. I'm so excited for this show, and I've been really enjoying listening to your podcast covering it. I have been reading Anne Rice books for about 30 years and have always been a big fan. They've come and gone in my life in bits and pieces, and I've always gone back to them. I really enjoyed the 1991 movie. Was it 91? I can't remember. The 1990s movie, Interview with the Vampire, and I know a lot of people didn't like parts of it. I actually really liked Tom Cruise in that. He didn't seem so Tom Cruisey to me. He just seemed like Lestat, and I really enjoyed it. Of course, we know that the Interview with the Vampire is Louis' story, and when you've read all of the books, you realise that Louis' voice is just a really small part of it, and we hear so much more from Lestat, which I absolutely love. And all of the other books that he is in and that are told from his point of view are so fascinating, and I really hope that we get to see some more series with Sam Reed as the central character of our beloved Lestat. My absolute favourite book is The Tale of the Body Thief, And it was pretty exciting in this episode to see Raglan James and that little throwaway comment he made, "If I could swap bodies with you," just sent a shiver down my spine and made me think, oh, I think they're going to go there with that book, hopefully as a series. So that will be very exciting. I love how they've set it in a different time period and sort of separated it, made it different from the movie and extended it out so much more. The writing is amazing. The acting is incredible. And just all of the character pieces, just so much talking, but it's just captivating. Absolutely love Armand. He makes a really, really good Armand. And Louis, everybody, they're just incredible. I love watching Daniel and his snarky comments. And Claudia is amazing as well. Absolutely adore her. And I'm really settling into the new actress playing the role. Anyway, that's it from me. I will be listening along as you continue through. Thank you once again. Really, really enjoying you breaking down of all of the episodes. And I'll see you later. Bye.
Awesome.
Yes. I am excited to see what happens. I think I got as far as Tales of the Body Thief, but I listened to a abridged version of it. So I don't think I got the full extent of the book. So I need to go back and well, I think I'm gonna do Queen of the Down next, so that way I can kind of refresh my memory about all that. Because I feel like next season we're gonna get Lestat's story, a little bit of Lestat and Louis and everything, and then it's gonna end with Akasha, and I feel like that's where it should end, and introduce season 4 with Akasha's backstory, and then maybe start getting some real, because we'll talk more about it in book talk, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm excited to see what happens next in on the show, and thank you both, Sam and Awan, for bringing your feedback to us. And please continue to give us your feedback. Let's see here. Well, that wraps up this episode. If you would like to leave us some feedback or just say hi, you can send us an email or a voice message at talk@podcastica.com.
And if you head to podcastica.com, there's a handy voice message link. Check us out on social media. Facebook would be facebook.com/podcastica, Twitter @podcastica, and Instagram @podcastica.com. So while you're at podcastica.com, there are going to be, and you haven't already checked, there could be other podcasts on the Podcastica network, like, well, I said it before, Still Slaying, a Buffy First podcast. You have Welcome to the Apocalypse, Run for Your Lives, Yellow Jackets, WTF, as well as House Podcastica, or The Cast of Us, which is doing a rewatch of what, Becky?
The Walking.
Which season are we at there with Lucy
We're
and
on
Jason?
3.
All right, season
We're
3.
about to meet the governor.
We're about to meet the governor.
Ooh.
And those of you who are Walking Dead fans like myself, Becky, Danny, we just love listening to Jason and Lucy as they break down. And this is a revisit. It's a rewatch, not what Jason and Karen had done years before when it got into season 3 at that point. This is Lucy and Jason covering it as they go back as a rewatch and with not as fresh eyes, but going back and reevaluating. So I thought it was pretty cool. So you get to hear a lot of other things. There's also, we have to go back, and that is a Wilhelm and Podcastica collaboration, and they're finalizing everything with Ted Lasso. I think they're already wrapped up, but they're going to be moving on to the next show. So check that out. And what else is out there that you guys would recommend on Podcastica?
House of the Dragon.
All right.
They're doing a great job.
I really need to get into
It's
that.
so good.
That's
show. Maybe that's what I'll do. I have a 4-day weekend coming up, so I am off for the next 4 days, and this heat is going to keep me indoors.
You too?
Yes, I agree.
I'm on the East Coast and I'm feeling it too today. By the way, I got really tan on my bald head today, being out in the sun and putting outdoor speakers. So yeah, I do home theater stuff, and today I had to run like for lots of wire, over 1,000 feet, everybody.
Ooh.
So,
ooh, wow!
But it's been fun. But I will be editing. I at least get to enjoy my 4th of July with my family and with a
Awesome.
barbecue, and then I have 3 days to possibly clean up my apartment and do whatever else I need to do, especially editing to get this stuff out to you. But enjoy your 4th, everybody.
Be safe.
Yes.
Be safe as well. Drink reasonably and responsibly. And if you can't drink and be responsible, get somebody to drive you. Just a little FYI. Anyhow, with that, I'm going to move on to a little bit more. This is a collaborative podcast between Adrenaline Cinema Podcast as well as Podcastica. So just to give a little promo, I do other podcasts, everybody. This is being played on Adrenaline Cinema Podcast as well as Podcastica. So we're going back to regular format. I mentioned this last episode. We're going to go back to the action, adventure, suspense, thriller movies that we all love and enjoy. I mentioned that we're going to do the next Friday the 13th installment with myself and Jamie. We're going to do Demolition Man. We're going to do Bloodsport. There's going to be a bunch of other movies that we're going to get into. Obviously, if you wanted to be part of the podcast, all you have to do is contact me at adrenalincinemapodcast@gmail.com. You could also be part of it. All you is required is literally headphones, a good working microphone, a really steady internet connection, and just a Gmail account, if need be, just for a document, and really great opinions and thoughts about the movies that you're doing. So let me know. We like to have fun with a lot of stuff in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, or whatever. Or even the most avant-garde B movies too out there too, because my friend Frank Rodriguez likes to bring up all the weird stuff, and Jerry Gomez likes to bring up Planet of the Apes. If you like that stuff, check it out. Adrenaline Cinema Podcast. All you have to do is go to facebook.com/Adrenaline Cinema Podcast. I could also be found on Panels to Pixels Podcast. All you have to do is go to facebook.com/Panels to Pixels Podcast. And you could find all the stuff there as well. What we're covering, we just wrapped up Dark Matter. So that was on Apple TV Plus. So you can check that out. We're going to move on to The Boys. We're going to do a whole season recap literally at this point because, yeah, The Boys have gone so far. It's so, wow, interesting. And I love it. But Steve Brown and I are going to cover it completely for this particular season because we kind of dropped the ball and not got into it. But by the time that drops, we'll be into Snowpiercer. So if you haven't checked out Snowpiercer, it used to be on Sci-Fi. Guess what? It's now on AMC Plus, and it's going to happen July 21st, I believe. So check out the new season after you watched all that stuff. You got a lot of time to binge watch, everybody. So we're going to go into that, and then we're going to do Deadpool Wolverine, do an overall evaluation of that. There's other stuff that's going on in the PirateCoreEntertainment.com website. So Fantasy Picks Movie Edition is going to be coming back in September. We're going to go do like pretty much like a recap of where we're at, the rebranding of what's going on with Rob's podcast. With that, we're looking for more people to come in, have fun. We're going to have a lot of fun with new things that Rob came up with. So if you like composers, movie, all the songs within movies, he's going to do a segment on that. Frank's going to do his lovely, wonderful or weird role pick of a movie, and we're going to cover those movies. We don't know what we're going to be covering at the time until we actually do it. And he drops it and saying, you have to watch this movie. Why did I watch Robot Jocks, everybody? Why? So, but we're going to do stuff like that. But you will get a podcast about where the rebrand is going with Fantasy Picks Movie Edition. Just check it out. Just follow fantasypicksmovieedition.com or go to piratecoreentertainment.com. And then you'll see the links and everything to go to Fantasy Picks Movie Edition. Other than that, we have watched it in the 80s. We have everything that Damien has put forth before. You can still listen to that stuff. I'm hoping Damien will come back. If he does, he's more than greatly appreciated and welcome back to the community. Damien, we're thinking of you, and we love you, and we care for you. And everybody can still hear your stuff. It's awesome. All right. So other than that, that's about it. So what do we have coming up next? I kind of mentioned it a bunch of times, Danny, but what are we doing?
Next time we will be covering Queen of the Dams.
From 2002.
Yes.
Starring Stuart Townsend,
Yes.
Vincent Perez, and the wonderful Aaliyah.
Awesome.
Yes. And that is going to be something that gets covered with not only Becky, myself, Mark, and Billy, but Laura will be back, which is going to be a fun little just get together, a little kiki with Queen of the Dam. So I'm excited. I'm excited to go into that. As this season comes to an end for this podcast, I do want to thank Mark for helping me acquire this amazing mic. So as you can see, my quality has gone up. Unfortunately, my Wi-Fi is another nightmare story. But at least my audio is a little bit better, and thanks to Mark. So I appreciate that. And with that, that will cover our episode. I'm Danny.
And I'm Billy.
And I'm Becky.
And I'm Mark. And I just want to thank everyone for listening.
Yay. Now we are going to go into book talk.
Woo-woo.
Everyone's favorite. Billy's favorite thing, because he's pretty much the one that's been in the know of all the books. So it's very interesting. I got like a little bit of here and there stuff, but I'm interested. I'm interested in stuff because I want to start off with one thing, because before it slips my mind, as we see Louis does go in the books after he destroys the theater of the vampires. He does go seeking Lestat, and he finds the way that he finds Lestat is he goes to New Orleans, and he starts to kind of scope out for other vampires, and he sees a vampire who ends up being I'm assuming Lestat's newest fledgling, and who's feeding him. And so I was wondering, because we do see Lestat in the book, he's not himself. He's like deprived or whatever, and still regaining his strength. So seeing that Lestat has his strength and was in this trial, I was wondering how they were going to portray him. And when you see him, he looks very sickly. And when I talked to Billy about this, he's like, well, yeah, he's been deprived of love and deprived of everything, and he's mourning. So of course he looks sickly. And so it's just very interesting to have that nod of Louis finding the way that Louis finds Lestat, because it kind of goes along with the book.
Yeah, but in the book, he's sickly because he's still scarred from the attempt on his life and the fire. Even though he's got the blood of Akasha in him, it still takes him quite a bit of time to heal from that kind of thing. So, and I think because he's not feeding properly on human blood, that's probably another reason why he's looking so gross in the books. Because the human blood is the most potent form of sustenance for them. Well, besides the blood of ancient vampires, but on a day to day or night to night basis, that's what that's what they. Well, and that's he says so in the Louis says so in the novel. Or no, not Louis. Lestat basically says that the drinking of animal blood is doable, but it's not going to give you the same as
Yeah.
human blood. So,
Or even Louis says it in the show where he was deprived from human blood, that he kills that I'm assuming the cemetery watchman or whatever you call them.
yeah.
Because he was like, my rage was lacking something, and it was blood, and so he goes and attacks the poor guy.
I also think that the drinking of human blood is supposed to be more than just sustenance for the vampires, because in the novels, obviously, and the show, they have things like sex, which doesn't happen in the novels. In the novels, they have their sex organs, but they're basically genderless. Um, but
Yeah.
the act of drinking blood is a form of intimacy too. So I think when vampires drink blood, they get two things from it, which is sustenance and that connection. That's why they crave the blood, is because they want that connection that they don't get.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I never thought about it that way. Like that, essentially, that's their way of getting that intimacy that they normally wouldn't get.
right.
Interesting. Yeah, I never thought about that.
Well, because you have to think about when he's very sad and he's moving through, I think it's the water district, and it's still the 19th century, and he's feeding off of rats and stuff. He's moving along, but it's not doing it for him. It isn't until he finds Claudia's sickly form in the shack that he finally gets what he's looking for, and he only gets it once he embraces her. So,
Yeah. Hmm. Let's see here. We get the introduction of Magnus, who is Lestat's maker.
Yep.
And so I'm excited to see what they do with him, because he doesn't really play a huge role in Lestat's life, because he makes him, and then shortly after he makes him, he walks into the fire, right? Or into the sun.
he throws himself on a fire, on a bonfire.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's
Yeah.
like described as like this really unattractive vampire, which the whole, I guess, philosophy in her novels is that you must be beautiful and powerful, and vampires are chosen for their beauty. And it's not necessarily physical beauty. It could be something like you're a master violinist and there's something beautiful about that or whatever. But she makes a point to describe Magnus as being markedly unattractive. He's a very unattractive vampire. In fact, I think he's missing all his teeth but his fangs. And so,
Oh,
yeah, and
interesting.
and they usually they usually make vampires. I'm sorry, they usually make fledglings in their youth. So the fact that Magnus is a much older man when he's made a vampire is also another thing. So
Yeah, and even Lestat describes Magnus as like the way that he picks vampires is he wants them to be young, white, blonde, blue-eyed.
yeah,
So that just goes with that. So I'm interested in who they're going to cast as Magnus.
me too. I'm really interested too. The only thing I really know about him, besides the fact that he's European, is that he has black hair. Yeah, and he's ugly.
And then another change to the novel is Daniel Malloy gets turned when he's younger. And so here we are, he's older. And I believe Laura said an interesting thing, that maybe they'll end up doing a body switch on him with a younger body, and maybe they'll change the actor to be somebody else, and it will be played by, or Daniel Malloy will be a younger version of himself. But but I mean, we do know that Daniel Malloy kind of goes crazy because he wants the gift. He wants to be turned into a vampire, just like he in the first interview he did with Louis. He was very like, give me the gift. Like, you don't understand. Like, I will like like, this is amazing. And Louis got pissed off and was like, this is a curse. Did you not listen to this interview that I just gave you of this horrible life? Like, why do you want this gift, And he demands it from, Armand, and Armand turns him into a vampire. And but in the book, he turns him because um he like wants to off himself, right, Billy?
He wants the blood so bad, and Armand will not give it to him. So he basically tries to drink himself to death until he gets to some kind of like liver failure or something. And so, as a way to keep him alive, or to keep him from going off into the oblivion, Armand changes him. Yeah, he becomes a vagabond by choice. He gets all this money from the royalties of the novels, in the fictional world, but he chooses to be a vagabond. And Armand does this thing where he'll just like stalk him from city to city and then randomly show up in his lodgings and ask him a bizarre question like, how do you get all the pictures to go on the television? And Daniel's kind of like, why are you asking me this question? Can't you see I'm trying to kill myself here? And he's like, that's interesting, but how do you get all the pictures to go into the TV? And then he has a Bjork moment and starts talking about all the little picture screens inside the television.
Wow. The naivety of Armand about modern technology, and then Daniel just like manipulating it. Yeah.
That's interesting. And then, of course, we get the introduction or the mention of Akasha, who is this Egyptian queen, right?
She and her husband Enkill were king and queen of Kemet before it was called Egypt. And they came, but she was said to have been a princess from either Mesopotamian or Babylonian culture. And she married Enkill, who was originally Egyptian. And they get vampirism through a spiritual attack. And their body fuses with this bloodthirsty spirit, Amel. And that's how they get vampirism. Is like his spiritual essence meshes with their genes, and they become this new thing.
How does that work?
It's explained in the novel, kind of. It's like
It's Billy's like telling us we have to read, everybody.
Well, she goes into great detail, and then she elaborates further on with like the novels she wrote, subsequently. Okay. And that's when it gets into like extraterrestrials and stuff like that, and that's when my brain kind of turns off. But
oh wow,
fair enough.
I know, and I do remember when I bought Billy that book, and he was reading it, and I could just see his expression like, what the fuck is going on here?
Why did you buy me this book? Are you trying to break up with me right now?
It was very interesting just seeing his reaction as he's reading this book, because he is a lover of Anne Rice's books, and so seeing this turn of it going into like aliens, he was like, what the heck happened? But then I think she redeems herself in the next book, right? I think you said that you like the book after that, because I can't remember the order of the books that come out after.
She really loved things like Atlantean theory and stuff like that. Ooh. And which is great. Like I'm for that, but it's like I don't like the meshing of concepts, like it's like Star Trek and Lord of the Rings coming together. I don't like that. That bothers me.
I can see where you're going with that. Yeah. I believe the same thing. It's kind of like the Bermuda Triangle involved with Atlantis and Egypt at the same time.
Yeah.
And then everything all melding together because it was all Pangea at one point. I know. Yeah.
It's funny that you bring up buying me the book, because I remember when I finished it, I was sitting in the living room just kind of staring off into space, and you looked at me like, are you okay? I was like, I'm trying to be.
Yeah, I
I
do
know you
remember
did this
that.
out of like the love of your heart to give me something that I like that I read, and you're like, okay, thanks.
Because I consumed that book in like 2 days probably, and I told her, I was
Wow.
like, yeah, I was like, I've been a long time fan, and I'm just gonna keep reading him because I appreciate her and her writing, but I'm not cool with what's going on here. Like, if it was its own kind of like mythos, I would have been, oh, this is really cool. But she merged my two things. You put my wets and my softs together, or my wets and my hards together. I don't like
Yeah.
that.
I know that feeling too. I honestly felt the same way too about Robert Lynn Asprin back in the day with Myth Inc.
Mhm.
Because it was all mythical, and then they started incorporating other things, and I'm like, what are you doing? You ruined my childhood. I was like in high school at the time when this stuff came out, and I'm like all into Dungeons and Dragons, and then it's like all this other stuff. I'm like, yeah, I'm not working with this. I'm gonna go back to Clive Barker right now.
Exactly. I only read all the way up until I think Blood Canonical is the last one before she goes off into this Atlantean theory thing. And
I
so,
love. It's funny too. I love the sciences and everything, but I think she probably went into that to be a little bit more mystical and try to incorporate a lot of things that were popular culture
yeah,
at that time, because you had to figure out Atlantis, Egypt, everything else that's historical that we all look forward to, and some of it is being fantasy because we don't know if Atlantean is reality or fantasy, and that's the whole thing. And then we also got the Mayfair witches, and then she tried to incorporate that. And then did she do anything with werewolf stuff?
she did. She did.
Okay.
She wrote 2 books.
Really good?
They were
Meh.
all right.
No.
Yeah, go
That says it all.
go to
Billy.
Stephen
That says
King
it
at
all.
that point.
Yeah.
Go cycle
Well,
with the werewolf.
I appreciate what she was doing. I think her obsession was just sort of the science of the soul. She wanted so much to materialize her spiritual beliefs.
Okay.
Even when she turned back to Christ, I think she was still partly an atheist at heart because she wanted a logical, rational, scientific explanation for God. And I think it obsessed her a lot. But
Interesting.
there was a part of her that when you, I guess I've just recently turned 30, so I'm starting to get like just the hint of this stuff. But like there's comes a point in your life where you kind of move towards things you kind of grew up with out of nostalgia because they bring you comfort.
Mhm.
And I think Catholicism was that for her.
Hmm.
So that was her whole existence at one point, and then she became this cold atheist for a time, and then alcoholism, and it's hard
Makes
to it's hard to get away from substance abuse without having some sort of spiritual help,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when she got back to Christ, she did it wholeheartedly, and she came up with the Christ books, but I think she always was trying to explain the science of the soul, and I think that's what the subsequent novels were, her attempt to do that, because she tries to use science to justify the existence of vampires in those books. She even does this thing where she reanimates Lestat's sex organs, and he begets an actual child.
Okay, that's confusing. We won't get into that till later on, everybody. If you want to read those books, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, it becomes really interesting at the end. That's all I gotta say.
All right. I see where probably the show will probably end at a certain point, because they're gonna have to. It's kind of like J.R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones, because he wrote so much after a point, and then he couldn't keep up, and then the show just kept going on. They'll probably do that at that point where it's like, all right, this is when she went off the cliff.
Right.
So we're going to do our own to make sense of it, to give our fans of the whole lore of vampirism, the witchery of everything too, because they're trying to do Mayfair witches, and they're trying to incorporate that in its story, but they're going to try to incorporate that as a whole. And I wouldn't be surprised if they continue Mayfair witches,
Yeah.
even though I don't follow it.
There's another season. I also watched this is not book related, but watched the Show Me thing, and they talked about how they're developing a series for the Talamasca.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm actually really interested in that. That would be an original story.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
That's interesting in a sense that it's like kind of like, hey, we did a Highlander TV show. We're going to do everything about the Watchers.
That'd be cool.
Or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and they have their Watchers, and we do a whole story about them and how they came to be and what they had to go through and the rigors and everything else. I find it interesting. I would say give it 1 or 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
If they do more than that, you're really doing too much at that point. you just need to add to the original idea and concept of the show,
right?
Or the point of view of the story of where it originated from. You don't have to go elaborative. It's like, you're not going to do. Honestly, you guys will laugh too because I'm a Highlander fan. They actually put Highlander, like the TV show / movie collaboration, into the theaters back in the early 2000s, and I went to go see it in theaters. And my brother goes, "Did you go see that in the theater?" I'm like, "Yeah," and yeah, I should have went straight to sci-fi, and that's really how it was. But it was an interesting story, but not many people went to go see it. So if it goes straight to AMC Plus or whatever, I'm fine with that, but don't do more than 1.
Right.
Do like 1 season, call it a day, and then have that integrate into the regular show base or show bases if you actually do Mayfair Witches and Interview with a Vampire, quote unquote, overall, because who knows what they're going to call next season. It might not be Interview with the Vampire.
Right.
It might be Interview with Lestat. Who knows?
Or it can just, it's going to be interesting, the changes there. But it should be like a limited series, and just kind of like The Walking Dead did with like The World Beyond, where they were like, we're gonna give you 2 seasons of this the spin-off of The Walking Dead, so you kind of get a backstory of what these characters are about, even though they integrate them into the Walking Dead show, which I really wanted them to. Anyhow, so if they're gonna like do the show about them, and they're gonna slowly integrate them into the actual Interview with the Vampires series and the
Mayfair Witches.
Mayfair
Did
Witches.
you just say the Mayflower? I love that. That was so good.
The
Mayflower Witches, or
that might actually be better than what we've got.
Right.
The ones that came with the pilgrims,
the Mayflower Witches.
Guys, I think we just got our TV show we need to start developing.
I know, right? All right. I think that kind of wraps up about book talk, and I think we have a lot going on. You guys, if you have any thoughts, you listeners, get back to us. Have fun.
Please.
Yeah. And then give us feedback. Yeah. I was going to say, give us the feedback for Queen of the Damned. So if you've seen it and rewatch it, please give us your feedback, and maybe we'll play that during the feedback portion of Queen of the Damned.
Yeah. We are going to be back.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you, and good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks for listening.